Hello, everyone. Welcome to our celebration webinar, celebrating the work of our CCGE Fellows. To get us started, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Rachel Kahn, who is the director of the Community College Growth Engine, to give a little bit of context about who we are at Education Design Lab and the work that we do before we head into our panelist discussion. Rachel?
So the Education Design Lab, if you're not familiar with us, we are a national nonprofit that is about 12 years old, really working at the intersection of post-secondary education and the workforce. And really with that focus on the group that we call new majority learner earners. And those are folks for whom traditional higher education was not designed to support. So think any population beyond your traditional 18-year-old high school graduate going into that typical residential experience. Within the umbrella of the Education Design Lab are about 30 to 40 different projects happening. The Community College Growth Engine is the largest project currently happening within Education Design Lab. This project was born out of a conversation that happened at the League for Innovation and the Community Colleges Conference the same day, the same city that the first COVID case was announced. So if you happen to have been there during that time, you were there for the birth of this project, as well as something that would certainly change our lives for the foreseeable future. But that just kind of goes to show how things have shifted since then, right? When we think about the need for a new model to be more flexible and adaptive to the changing needs of learners and employer populations across the country, community college leaders said, we need a new way to do this. And so the Growth Engine was born. And like all of the projects at Education Design Lab, we have a design question that is focused on the design of equitable and accessible micro pathways towards high growth careers that are endorsed by employers and visible to learners. And again, moving from that post-secondary space into the workforce. And to do that, we have this set of design criteria that serve as, the rigor to ensure that what we design makes sense for the learners and the employers that we aim to serve in this work. In terms of design criteria, each micro pathway has to include 2 or more stackable credentials, has to align and be validated to regional labor market and wage data, and be validated by true employers in those communities. These are short-term experiences completed in 1 year or less. Multiple modalities, so when we think about flexible delivery format and what makes sense in order to be accessible for these learner populations. Of course, affordability is critical. We want to think about how might we align to different funding opportunities, whether it's at the state level, private employer support, and what that could potentially look like to make those accessible. Digital discoverability through the use of badges and other sorts of digital credentials so that the learner is truly empowered to show their skills and competencies to employers. And that integration of technical and durable skills that employers have found so important in ideal candidates for jobs. And so if you've not seen this model before, just to make sure we're all on the same page about what we call a micro pathway, and you might have done something like this at your institution or within your system, and maybe you call it something different. But just in terms of shared taxonomy, this is what we call a micro pathway. On the left side of your screen, you'll see those 3 circles. The yellow circle is the integration of technical skills. So those hard skills the learner needs to be able to demonstrate to be successful at a job. 21st century skills or durable skills, things like intercultural fluency and resilience, those things that can go across multiple job sectors, but employers have said these are the most critical ones for someone to be successful in a specific job. And then we build an on-the-job training opportunity, which can be as formal as an apprenticeship or an internship, or as informal as a series of job shadowing opportunities or information interviews. The idea is to give the learner opportunities to access an industry and a job before they go all the way through this program, and also help them build that social capital that we know new majority learner populations don't traditionally have access to. All of the pieces in those bubbles have been informed by and validated by employers in the community that we're working in, who have said, yep, there's a need for this job. These are the skills and competencies. We feel confident that if a learner can successfully demonstrate these, they are ready to move into fill in the blank job at our organization that pays at or above median wage, has an advancement trajectory in those pieces. Similarly, the institution that we're working with is saying that learner is going to be able to earn credit towards a degree. So we're putting the learner on a path with a professional trajectory, as well as on the path to degree completion. And so this just gives you a sense of where the growth engine has gone over the last several years. We've continued to scale our numbers. And again, we're with over 100 colleges across the country, including state and regional systems, which is super exciting. We've developed over 200 employer-validated micro pathways across 7 different sectors with over 111 occupations. And again, all with the focus of the new majority learner and facilitating their success while helping to drive economic mobility in regions across the country. And this is just the exciting map that we'd like to show as things are starting to fill in. Now, depending on what your state you're from, you may feel differently about where some of these boundaries lie. I know when I talk to folks from the Midwest and the West, there's always a little bit of confusion about what state lines are where. But for purposes of this conversation, it's great to see this map starting to fill out and seeing just the impact of this work. And, again, the idea that across the country, folks are seeing a need for just a more flexible and adaptive model. And with that, I will hand it back over to Elizabeth to talk specifically about the Fellows program.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I think it's really important as we begin this conversation to have the framing of what Education Design Lab does, where is it that we find our expertise, and I'm really excited to share with you more about the Fellows program. So the Fellows program began its first cohort last December, and we have had a wild ride of a year. We have done a lot of learning together, a lot of observation, and a lot of exploration of the lab's tools to be able to figure out what systems change means within the context of each of these states. So as you can see here in this visual, the Fellows program was spread across 5 states nationwide. There are representatives that you guys are going to hear from today that include representation from both institutions and from system levels. This diverse perspective was really important in the conversations, and I think that you're really going to hear that today. As we look at the goal of the Fellows program, really the goal is to establish a dynamic and inclusive Fellows program that was really dedicated to supporting the Fellows as facilitators of both institutional and systems change. We use the micro pathway design process to do this, but ultimately what we were looking at here was the development of, was looking at the change process and the development of micro pathways in that conversation as it relates to their broader ecosystems. In order to do this, we looked specifically at 3 major deliverables as the CCGE Fellows took this year to, number 1, understand the lab's approach to the community college growth engine micro pathway design process. We also spent the year observing, learning, using, and providing feedback to the design process, to the resources and the tools. And then at the very end, which is what you guys are going to hear more about today, is these fellows have worked together to design a state micro pathway implementation blueprint, which is reflected in the insights briefs that have been shared through our innovator network over the past couple of weeks. I wanted to take this here. So Walmart has been a very generous funder of this program and wanted to really highlight the investment of this funder and really seeing how these innovative leaders from across the country can learn from this experience and design blueprints for replicating it in their own state environment to expand the impact of this work. It's important when we design these solutions to understand that a one-size-fits-all approach isn't going to work, right? We have to figure out what it is within the context of our own ecosystems that makes design unique. And I'm really excited to share with you all of the great things that these folks have done. So just to kind of wrap up, this process has been a journey. And in this journey, we have touched major touch points of our design, of our micro pathway design process. But what I want to highlight here is that there have been multiple on-ramps and off-ramps to deeper exploration that has led to transformational change in each of these ecosystems within their own context. So with that, I am excited to introduce to you our first cohort of fellows, and would love for each of you to share your name and where your role in the organization that you currently work at. We're going to start with our Arkansas folks, and then we're going to end with our Washington folks. So we're going to go in alphabetical order. Okay? Does that sound good? All right, Mason, you're up first.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm Mason Campbell. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Academic Affairs with the Arkansas Division of Higher Education. Generally speaking, our office is responsible for, maintaining and developing academic policy and accountability and programming, also workforce development, concurrent enrollment, placement, transfer articulation as it relates to all of our 4-year and 2-year public institutions. So it's really great to be here and hope to get to know you all better.
Hi, I'm Tracy Harrell, Chief Program Development Officer here at the Arkansas Division of Higher Education, along with Mason. And I'll save you all the time and say ditto to what he said.
Hi, everybody. This is Mary Beth Lakin, and I'm the Executive Director for Minnesota State's Credit for Prior Learning Assessment Network, or C-Plan, and Minnesota State Colleges and Universities has 7 universities and 26 community and technical colleges. So over to Rob.
Well, and good afternoon. Rob Lowe, that's Rob with 2 B's. I'm also with Minnesota State Colleges and Universities with the System Office. I actually work with the Perkins program as the Director of Career and Technical Education Pathways. So what I do basically is try to connect, actually even expand this community college growth engine. I start back in the secondary, trying to align secondary to post-secondary pathways to employer. So when I heard about CCGE, I was incredibly excited because I knew 4 of our institutions in Minnesota were doing this. And anything that has to do with CTE, career tech ed pathways, I'm involved with. So I just dove right into this, and it's been a transformative experience. And Daniel, I'll let you follow up with that. Take it away, sir.
Oh, thank you, Rob and Mary Beth. Like you said, this has been an absolute pleasure working with all of you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel de Moraes. I also work for the Minnesota State College and University Systems, not particular institution. My role is the Director of Program Support and Quality Assurance in Academic Affairs. In addition to what I do in my capacity for supporting academic affairs issues in Minnesota, I'm also pursuing my doctorate in education, where micro-credential design implementation is a topic that I'm going to be exploring as part of my dissertation. So this was a perfect learning opportunity and a great place for connections. Thank you.
I am Shelton Charles. I'm an Associate Dean for Science and Engineering at Forsyth Technical Community College.
I'm Renee Harrison. I am Vice President of Health Sciences at Forsyth Tech.
Nancy Miller, and I'm an Associate Professor at Forsyth Tech. And Cindy is also part of our team, and she has come down with the flu and has been really sick. So I just wanted to give her name a shout out as well.
Thank you, Nancy. And we miss you, Cindy, when you watch this back. We miss you. All right, I'm going to hand it over to the one and only Oklahoma.
I'll go first and last for the Tulsa team. A team of 1 here. Very nice to see everyone be here today. I'm the Dean of our School of Business Information Technology here at Tulsa Community College in the northeast corner of the state of Oklahoma. I had the privilege of being a member of Cohort 1 with all these other folks, Community College Growth Engine Fellowship. And one important note about me and our work here is that we are on spring break. So I've got a nice floral spring arrangement behind me, but that's one of the part and parcel as to how excited and enthusiastic for this work that all of us are. So delighted to be here with all of you, spring break or not.
Thank you, Travis, and thank you for the spring inspiration. We appreciate it. All right, and then last but not least, Washington.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Sells. I'm a policy associate in the Office of Educational Resources and Innovation at the Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges. For short, that's SBCTC, in case you hear us refer to it that way. Our agency is led by a 9-member governor-appointed board that advocates for, coordinates, and directs Washington's state system of 34 public community and technical colleges. And I'm just really excited about shifting our design culture and creating opportunities for learners to demonstrate their skills throughout their educational journey. And I'll hand it over to my partner, Carolyn.
Thanks, Alyssa. Good morning, everybody. I'm Carolyn McKinnon with the State Board in Washington State. I'm a workforce education policy staffer, so I lead a team that's interested in what industry needs most in terms of skills in the workforce. We're a little bit of an economic development policy unit, and we're very interested in increasing the profile of non-credit credentials and creating more formal and transparent bridges from non-credit to credit. So I came into this with that lens pretty strongly activated. I'm really excited to use the design tools that we learned here to support our colleges in doing exactly that.
Thank you so much. And my name is Elizabeth Ham. I serve as an education designer at Education Design Lab. I've had the privilege to work with these wonderful fellows over the past year. I also have the privilege of working with the Advance NC initiative in North Carolina, which is a combination of 11 community colleges, 7 workforce boards, 3 universities, and 2 nonprofits to design micro pathways and close the skills gap in advanced manufacturing. So really thankful to be here with you guys today. As you can see, we have a diverse group. We have a diverse group of leaders that have gone through this professional development experience together. And so what I want us to do over the next 30 minutes or so is really to give the floor to the experts and have them share with us their story and their experiences throughout the Fellows program. My hope through this conversation is that you will hear something that you can take back with you, whether it be to your institution, to your state system, to your organization, so that you can continue to create transformational change within your own context as well. So, my first question for the Fellows group is, what did you learn about your institution, your system, through this year-long program? What is it that stood out to you about what you have learned?
One of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to get an idea of how were the different initiatives that were going on in our system around this type of an effort. And it was interesting to realize that there were a number of initiatives and that these initiatives did not necessarily know about one another. So that was, I think, one of the big ahas, that we do have things happening, but we're not talking with each other about it. So we're trying to convene that and bring that together.
And I could just add to what Rob just said. One of the things it did also, it gave us different processes and systems so that we could make things more cohesive. It gave us a structure, because at times at our institution, you may have different individuals doing different things, but this gave us a structure and a purpose to allow all of us to work in a more cohesive way.
And I'll just add to that as well. So I'm not working within a state system, the individual institution, but the need and space for a shared taxonomy, but also a shared design framework. And I really think that was just reflected throughout the year-long process as the benefit of that learning process that we all went through, the design framework of Education Design Labs in researching and constructing and validating and launching micropathways for industry.
One of the things that was very insightful to learn in a memorable moment is when we're using some of the tools, the learner persona tool, and our group engage into the conversation of, how is it that a learner with the same demographics is represented across the state. So someone with the same demographics in the metro region of Minnesota may not have the same needs and wants as someone in the southwest corner of Minnesota. So when you put 3 nonconformist hearts in the same spot, we started kind of tailoring a little bit of how is it that we can leverage the tools to better serve like a system. So also a learning process, not only from our institutions and systems, but also from the Education Design Lab, flexibility in being able to adapt the tools to be able to serve the systems that we are serving as part of this Fellows program. So the things that we learn from both ends of the spectrum.
I'd like to double down on Daniel's sharing. We're also in a system of 34 colleges, and typically the space I occupy in our system is helping the colleges see what decision makers want them to, what kind of outcomes decision makers want them to drive to. Produce more nurses, very in-demand skills, meeting the skills gaps of our state. That work is about what the outcomes are. This work with the design lab is really about how, a new way of how students can get there. And so this has been a new space for me to occupy, engaging with the design lab and contemplating how to engage with our colleges with a new how to go about meeting skills needs. And for me personally, in my organization, that has been a revelation.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your insights about those lessons learned. I think that there's a unique balance in what we've learned about consistency and autonomy. And I know that Daniel mentioned that, right? Like, how do we make sure that we provide consistency for our institutions and for our systems while also leveraging the expertise of the various stakeholders that sit at the table? So that's really important. Speaking of the how, this has not been an easy process. This has been a year of learning and a year of growth. So I want to ask you, how have you pushed the boundaries of the design process? And then also, how did the design process push you as a professional and as an individual?
I'm going to start with the personal, which is reflected in my professional work. And that is that as a policy staffer in a state agency, I tend to be a bit of a ruminator. I will sit and really work through ideas and make sure that I've got really good precision and understanding on my own before I even bring it to a conversation. And that's not what this design process is about. This is about rapid cycling of innovation, trying new things, using the design tools to test out ideas and to test them out with colleagues, with real people in conversations. So that was a great stretch for me. And my colleague Alyssa was so supportive in jumping in and showing me what that looks like to go ahead and try the tools and get on with life and not sit and ruminate alone.
Pushing the boundaries of how we think about design, that it is not linear, right? You have to keep cycling back. It's iterative, kind of what Carolyn was saying. And systems move really, really, really slow. So I really had to, for myself personally, I had to kind of embrace being okay working on multiple things all at the same time without being able necessarily to finish everything into tidy little, I'm done with this and check things off. So I always had to be thinking ahead about what seeds we could plant so that we could, just keep moving in the process and keep learning. So that was challenging for me. We've been pushing the limits and methods within our existing systems, I think, by exploring this design process and finding new and different ways of doing things rather than sticking to like traditional design practices. And for me, that's meant modeling and focusing also on collaborative design. So for modeling, I've really tried to learn every part of the design process so that we can lead by example and model these design innovations at a system-wide level when we get to the point where we're starting to bring our colleges in. And then for collaborative design, I think one thing that's really important for us is shifting to a culture of designing with, not for our learners and employers. That's been a really big game changer. And the lab's human-centered design process has shown us a way to engage with those stakeholders, and it provides opportunities for growth, belonging, and agency while we're being allowed or have the flexibility to adapt the design tools to our specific needs. So I think just thinking outside our normal channels of like how we would go about this usually has been really great for us.
So one of the things it did was, for me personally, was just really facilitate my understanding on the importance of taking an asset-based approach with learners. but then I also do the same things with campuses and employers. And we begin to feel like that framework was really essential to engaging all of our partners, all of our constituencies in this kind of work. So if we think about particular components of the learner persona, like agency and sense of belonging, then we can think about how do we build that into institution and regional personas? Because remember, we wanted to come at this from a system perspective in terms of a kind of framework to develop that provides standards and flexibility. So looking at it from building an institution and regional persona, we could better understand their perspectives, their experiences, and then we could think across relationships, our state system to institutions and institutions to learners. And always, I think throughout this whole experience, we were being reminded ourselves that we're going to listen and learn, that we're not the only experts. We're not always experts, and there are different roles we can play in this work.
To add to that, I think Alyssa highlighted a lot of the points I wanted to talk about. One point here is very collaborative, and you are not the center of the universe. You have to look at it like this, right? So it's more of a collaboration. So designing a learner persona, you have to have the students in the room. You have to have all stakeholders in the room. So whenever you build a product, it's for everyone, and everyone has participated so that you could get more buy-in into the process. So this is a very, very structured, collaborative process, and it's not a one-size-fits-all, because as you could hear from the various colleagues here, we all are going through a process, but we're looking at the process from a different angle.
I would just add that, I mean, any good process has to at least imply boundaries. And otherwise, how do you follow the process and how do you move forward? One huge memorable moment for us was when we realized that most of those boundaries that we had perceived were almost entirely fabricated by us. We were perceiving the tools and the resources to be confining because we're rule followers, but they're truly not. I mean, sure, we had to learn about the process and boundaries before we could break out of them, but everyone that goes through this design process needs to know that you're encouraged to push those boundaries and think bigger.
One of the things that I found challenging is I don't like feeling constrained. I like to push boundaries because that's my nature, but I have to be careful. Am I pushing just because I want to push, or am I pushing for a very valid reason? So what Mary Beth started with sharing is that we found a lot of the tools were really centered on creating micro-credential or micro-pathways. We're looking at the systematic type activities, so those tools didn't necessarily match what we were trying to do. So with the help of Elizabeth at Education Design Lab, we're able to kind of look at those tools, make some modifications, use some pieces of them to try to broaden that perspective so we could get more of a regional or institution or system feel. And as Mary Beth was talking about, one of the real aha moments, I think, for us was when we were looking at the learner persona and realizing for our emphasis and our focus, it really was going to be next to impossible, because we're looking at a system-wide approach. It was going to really be impossible to create that learner persona. So as Mary Beth mentioned, that kind of then morphed into, well, okay, let's think about persona in slightly different ways. For instance, what might an institutional persona look like? What might a regional persona look like? So we developed a series of phases, a series of questions that tried to address those issues from an institution or a regional standpoint. And we are in the process of kind of rolling out and seeing, does our model actually work? We're in the process of reaching out to a regional college and trying to ask them the questions that we have created, make connections with employers. So there's a lot of things that we still are trying to learn. And I guess I would emphasize that just because we kind of are done sort of with this first cohort, the activity and the initiatives are still going on, and we're still finding out were our conclusions or our assumptions valid, and will it help us at a systemic level to create some guidance?
For me, at the beginning of this process, I kind of just reverted back to being a student myself, because these design tools were presented in sort of a lesson fashion. Here they are, here are the fundamentals, and kind of presented as homework. And here, this is, now go apply them. And I struggled a bit because I wanted to get my homework done, kind of like a student would, and I was unable to do it. And it was a little frustrating to me. So it took a little, I'm not even gonna lie, it took a lot of time to realize that not every piece of this design process is applicable to our everyday work. Mason and I kind of had to throw our thesis in the trash, so to speak, at the last hour and start over, because we realized that the cookie cutter prescriptive approach was not going to work when you don't have direct access to students. So we had to mix it up and do things a little bit different, being at a state agency, and just figure out, how can we take this design process and make the most impact in our state? And it might not be with a traditional blueprint of a micro pathway. It might be in helping our institutions in their design process instead.
I love that. That is beautiful. And I really appreciate, again, all the diverse perspectives that are at the table. Just in the introductions, you see the diverse expertise, but it's really great to understand that everybody's experience through this process was different as well. You guys have shared a lot about what you've learned and kind of how you've been pushed. I want to kind of transition our conversation to talking about the outcomes, to talking about that blueprint that you developed, talking about those insights that were revealed. And so my next question is, how do you envision using human-centered design and this program experience to actually drive that transformation within your organization and within your ecosystem?
I'll kick us off on this one, inspired once again by hearing the reports, even though I'm already aware of all the work, is that one thing that you heard commonly expressed here, and you're likely to find if you engage in this work within your colleges as well, is that the work is happening in multiple places, even if you don't know it. That those silos, they're very real. And the reality is that innovation far outpaces policy. And one thing that we found in Minnesota is that we have multiple institutions already engaged with micro-credential design work, even though it's not even recognized within our system policies and procedures. So we're kind of having a retroactive approach. Now that we have all of these programs that have already implemented some type of programming, how we can create policies and procedures to formally recognize that as something that is recognized system-wide. One of the things that falls on the responsibility of a now for micro-credential work group that is creating those recommendations for policies and procedures, and some of us are active in that, is in creating those policies and procedures, how is it that we can also minimize this first mover advantage, where the policies and procedures are going to be geared to those that have already created the programs, and simultaneously that created a gap that Rob, myself, and Mary Beth are looking into proposing is for colleges and universities, once this is recognized in policy and procedures that are not in this space, we're trying to create a blueprint of onboarding on how is it that your college can enter the micro-credentialing space. So this is one way that we found that the Fellows program being able to support a system-wide initiative together with policies and procedures to ensure that our colleges and universities have an equitable approach in being able to offer these types of education to their regions.
I think in conversations, which, the Education Design Labs has really structured this in terms of micro pathway and micro pathway development. But outside of taxonomy, there's not necessarily a shared understanding, not only of terminology, but also of the importance of and future of what this looks like and what this work looks like. So I think in conversations, in my case with faculty, I'm in the academic space, but also with academic leadership, whether that's at institutional or state level, at our board level, leadership, sharing the shared taxonomy and the shared approach to this type of work and what we anticipate that it will look like and its significance for our institution or for our states in the future. So both from the bottom up and from the top down.
Here in Washington, our statewide goal across all subsectors of higher education, and this is a goal really driven by our major employers, is to attain 70% higher education attainment across our adult population. We're about 8 percentage points short of that. And this initiative has really given us some practical ways to have conversations with folks about how to engage working learners who need immediate labor market outcomes for small bites of very tangible, right here, right now, education and skills training. But it's a lost opportunity if, while they're taking that small bite and they're getting their labor market outcome, that they don't see themselves on a pathway to higher attainment when they're ready. And so this is really, I feel, connected me very well and deeply to our statewide big vision and our goal in a very practical way.
Part of this has been really interesting because our state's done a lot of guided pathways work. Our colleges have been working on that for 4 or 5 years now. And I really see this micro pathway process as an extension of that work. It's a way to provide those paths to career and to education attainment. So it really fits well, I think, with the hard work our colleges are already doing. What I really liked about this process is that the lab's human-centered design process gives us a means for shifting our culture, our design culture, shifting it to one that invites participation across our ecosystem, and also shifting to focusing on skills rather than just on course completion, which I think is going to be monumental for our learners and moving folks toward degree attainment. I'm also hoping that we can move away from a fragmented approach where our colleges reach out separately to the same employers. So employers are fielding the same types of questions from multiple places. And I'm really hoping that we can work toward a really collaborative process that leverages our centers of excellence as hubs for innovation and as the center for this type of design work.
Well, it's been really great for us at Minnesota State, as Rob and Daniel have mentioned, that things are converging. So we've got this micro-credentials work group going on, and it's really made us think about how we do this work across systems. So it's not only putting the policy and procedure together, but it's how do you support the people doing the work? And so what kind of resources do they need? We all have capacity issues, right, everywhere. So how do we deal with that? And really thinking up front about everybody doesn't know what a micro-credential is or how to put one together. So what kind of training do we need to provide? And that's not only faculty, but everybody at a campus has a piece of this work somehow. So they all need to be part of a cross-functional team to figure out how that works. So that's been interesting. The other part of this is just thinking about models. And I've worked with credit for prior learning implementation for a really long time. And so I've seen a lot of things where processes or products are shown and everybody will look around and say, well, I can't do this because X, Y, Z. And we all have the X, Y, Z, right? Or let me just take this model and plop it down, in my setting. And we know that doesn't work either. So we've really learned a lot about taking a model or a framework or a process like human-centered design education design lab pathways and figure out, all right, what does that look like in our environment? You know, what adaptations do we have to, or should we make? And then who are the people that need to be all talking together with us about this? Oh yeah, let's don't wait until the last minute to talk to the registrar about this. So I guess I like to say this whole design process is an art and a science. So there are some things to follow, but then there's things that you have to play with too.
Much like Minnesota, Arkansas has a lot of these similar pieces moving around. And we learned so much so fast. I'm not even sure that we fully understand all of what we learned or how we can, leverage it to accomplish transformational change. But I think we have to continue to apply what we learned to our policy, and we have to stay engaged, and we have to influence our policy to create that sustainable impact, to create that lasting impact. So we will continue to do that, to stay engaged and to keep it at the forefront of what we're doing. As we make small changes over time, you'll get that transformation.
It's not only in terms of at Minnesota, at the institutional or system level, but I work with Perkins. And part of Perkins has what's called a comprehensive local need assessment. But what I've done is maybe able to transition some of the questions that, or the tools that Education Design Lab has, and put them or integrated them into some of the application process that we have in a very specific method or model for gathering data to create Perkins pathways. So not only is it on a micro or a macro level, but it's also, there are some of these tools that we can introduce into various areas that are different.
We have this whole persona development group now, and it kind of jumped into being about the same time as all this work. And so we've got a group across the system developing personas to use them in different ways on campuses and at the system office to take a more student-centered approach. And not just about micro pathways, but anything from recruiting to admissions to transcripts to course development. And so that's to hiring new staff and faculty. So that's I seem like I'm harping on persona development a lot today, but I really like it. So I want to keep emphasizing it and have people think about the different ways it can be used.
Thank you so much for all of your insights. We're getting a lot of really great questions in the chat and in the Q&A section. If questions are coming up for you, I encourage you to document those, to put them in the chat or to put them in the Q&A. We will have a few minutes at the end of our session today for the fellows to answer some live questions. So please document those. I also want to go ahead and call out, as we're talking about their blueprints and how they see transformation happening in the system. Over the past 3 weeks, we have been publishing their insights briefs, the fellows insights briefs, through Education Design Lab. We've been posting those on LinkedIn. They've also come out in our Innovator Network. At the end of this call, we will share with you how to sign up to join the Innovator Network, but I want to offer you that there is documentation of all of these insights. I'm ready for you to dig deeper into and figure out how to apply it within your own context. So really exciting stuff, really great work that's happening within each unique context. So my last question for you is this. We have a lot of really great folks that are here with us today. I want you to tell us, fellows, number one, what did you learn about yourself through this process? And as others are figuring out how to be engaged in this type of work, what piece of advice might you give them as they start this work?
I'll say, come in with an open mind, be vulnerable, and work with your team. You guys have the answer. So it's not about, okay, there's a structure, there's fluidity within the structure, and you don't just have to stick to the given method. You could adapt it to suit you or your organization or your institution or your system.
What did I learn about myself? That I like to have all the answers. My husband probably already knew that, but I didn't have all the answers, and I had to learn to be okay with that. I think my best piece of advice for the next cohort would be to understand that not every piece of this design process would be applicable, and to document or journal this process. It is going to be a journey, and you are going to want to remember each one of these phases that you're going to go through to be able to help you collect all your thoughts at the end. So journal all your way through it.
A lot of times as you travel through the process, you'll learn so much from each other, and you'll enter with the flexibility, and sometimes you'll feel like this is going to be the way that this needs to come together for us. But be interchangeable, because as you grow and learn, your design may become just a little different. It'll still have some originality to it from what you first thought, but just be interchangeable. Be willing to be able to move forward and change as you go through the process if that's necessary.
I also struggled with not having answers to all of my questions and being able to dig real deep into things because we had to keep moving. I also struggle with leaving things unfinished. Tracy mentioned that a little earlier, not being able to just check things off. So I'm totally in that camp with her. It's really been challenging to keep the process moving and to fully explore what we were learning at each step. So my advice would be to remain flexible, be adaptable, and be open to learning and to change. And that you're going to need to embrace going fast and slow at the same time, and always kind of be thinking within the process of, okay, I mentioned this earlier, planting seeds for what you can do next or what you can be working on, like say, like while you're waiting for learners to respond to a survey. You can't really do your survey analysis, until you have that back. So what else can you be working on? So you really have to be willing to go fast and slow at the same time. Also, having collaborative partners is extremely helpful. I could not have done any of this work without Carolyn. She has been an excellent partner in thinking, and she had a lot of pieces to the puzzle that I just didn't have. So her area of expertise is different than mine. And it's really been great working with her. So, really finding a design team that has those skills and perspectives that you need, and continually reaching out to learn things as you go, because you can't know everything at the beginning. When we got to a point where we needed to learn something, I had to go find who knew that, who had the information we needed, and then we would meet with that person and talk about it. So going fast and slow at the same time, and having collaborative partners, that would be my advice.
Trust the process. It might not make sense at first, but stick with it. Find where it fits, find where it doesn't. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I don't know what the F is going on, or I don't know how to apply this. And also, I think use each other as cohort members. Connect with each other, share with each other. I think that's one of the wonderful things about being a cohort, is we were able to interact with one another periodically and talk about the struggles we were facing or the accomplishments that we were having. So I think my message would be, don't be afraid to not know. Don't be paralyzed by the process, and trust it. And know that you have a lot of great people to help you in your cohort, in your community, and certainly within Education Design Labs. So that'll be $10 a little later, Elizabeth, but anyway, so.
Although Rob that should be the final word. I do want to play off of Alyssa, because I'm sitting here saying one of my learnings, of course I know that collaboration and group work is always more powerful. The more points of view we have, the more we can solve problems. I came into it thinking I am the lead administrator and do policy oversight for our 13 industry-specific centers of excellence across Washington's community and technical college system. And here it is, our great coworker, Alyssa, who has the fresh eyes to see how essential a role our centers of excellence can potentially play in promulgating or making this model available and really tangible and supporting our colleges in deploying this across the system. And so, Alyssa, right back at you. I couldn't see it. It was too close to me. And so there's the power of that teamwork. And then my advice is get used to the Education Design Lab staff being really helpful. I called on Elizabeth with a completely different project that I'm working on with industry and with students. And I said, how can I use some of these tools? How should I adapt this? And she jumped online with me and helped me. And it's been so great to have those tools and to have a partner in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being so present, for being authentic, and for moving through this experience together. In higher education, we often talk about a community of practice, right? People that come together to solve a common problem. This has been a beautiful example of what a community practice is as we support each other in the work, creating a safe space to really share our findings, to share our obstacles along the way. So I am really, really thankful for all of the work that you guys have contributed to this. And I'm really excited, y'all, to share with you that the conversation isn't ending. This is the first time that we have announced this in a public space, but Fellows 2.0 is coming and it is here. So what I would like to do is welcome our new fellows. I don't know if you guys saw just a few minutes ago, but we had several black boxes at the bottom. We had some people that could come in for just a minute and then had to pop out. But I'm really excited to share with you a little bit about the context of the new fellows group, and then excited to introduce you to the folks that are going to be behind the screens and really digging into this work in the next fellows cohort. So the next fellows cohort will be launching in April. We are working on coordinating our new launch date with the team internally. But this fellows cohort is going to be the same and a little bit different, as we are going to be focusing on how state and system workforce leaders can use the micro pathway and human-centered design process to create change in their own ecosystems. So this is going to allow us to have more of a pinpointed focus on workforce, understanding the unique role that workforce plays specifically at the system level, as we consider how to connect policy, how to connect institutions, and how to connect our employers in the conversation. Throughout the next fellows program, we are going to be focusing on making sure that our processes and our programs are visible to our learners, are endorsed by employers, are aligned to both institutional needs and system and statewide needs, and that as systems come into the conversation, that we can offer authentic and transparent support and make sure that we are coming to the table as system leadership to make sure that we're really supporting what the institutions need to do. And as the Fellows 1.0 has mentioned, that they are the experts of what's happening at their institution. So how can we help to elevate and really move that work forward? So all of that to say, I am really excited to welcome Fellows 2.0. What we're going to do real quick is we're going to go through our introduction slides. If the fellows are here, I ask you to unmute to show your faces. We'd love to see you with your videos on, and share your name, your role, your organization, and then one thing that you were excited about in this next round of fellows. So I am going to hand it over to Tina and Kyla. Will you guys introduce yourselves and give us some context about where you're coming from and what you're looking forward to?
Hello, Tina Moore, Director of Workforce Development at the Arkansas Division of Higher Education. And I'm looking forward to picking up where Mason and Tracy began and continuing that with a special focus on workforce development. And we have several schools in our state that are currently going through the community college growth engine process. And I want to be able to better support them and then really look at systems change across all of our institutions. So I need to know how it's done to be able to better support others. So I'm so excited to be part of this group. Pass it to you, Kyla.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kyla Waters with Arkansas Community Colleges. ACC is the statewide community college association. All 22 public community colleges belong to our association. At ACC, I head up the Center for Workforce, and Tina just took all the words out of my mouth, but that's why she's going to be such a great collaborative partner. I'm excited to be working with Tina. Arkansas is small. We all know each other. So I think this work is really going to help us be innovative. And that's something I'm really excited about, is we don't often have a space to be innovative. And also, to support the community colleges that are already doing this work, and just, leveraging all of the good work that Mason and Tracy have done.
And I will just also echo on our end, we have a recent legislation that was just signed last week that really aligns well with the purpose of this work. So I think that this will help us even implement the new legislation that has a workforce focus. So it just, all the pieces coming together is great.
Thank you so much, Tina and Kyla. We're excited that you are a part of this continued conversation. I'm going to now hand it over to Natalie and Daniel from the Nevada System of Higher Education.
Hi, everyone. Natalie Brown, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Workforce Development for Nevada System. And we have 4 community colleges within our system, and we also oversee our research universities and state universities all under one umbrella. But there's a lot of work that we have really just started laying the foundation for in the micro-credential space, and lots of ambitious goals for this coming year. And so excited to be part of the Education Design Lab too. One, it was great hearing from the first round of fellows, and, utilizing everybody on this call, because that, I feel like, has been one of the ways we've been able to really think big and look at how we can better support our students across the entire state. So thank you all. I appreciate being here. And yeah, we really are excited for the work to come. Daniel had to step off. He's not feeling well today, but he's very excited to be part of this initiative as well.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And we are excited to be able to continue the conversation with all of these great people at the table. So that's wonderful. All right, next, I'm going to hand it over to Crystal and Tola from Ohio.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good afternoon, morning to everyone on here, depending on where you are in our great nation. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see you, Crystal.
Yeah, I was not able to share. Now I can. Hopefully you can see me now. Okay, wonderful. Yes, anyway, Crystal Jones, as Elizabeth had mentioned, from the Ohio Association of Community Colleges here. I have the pleasure of being the Senior Director of Workforce Partnerships and the Director of the Ohio Semiconductor Collaboration Network. Yes, workforce is one of those words we've been working on here in the state at all levels of education. And as you all know, community colleges are perfectly situated and positioned to support our K-12 and our university partners. So I'm hoping to learn more. And I can tell you, after hearing about the first fellows and their experiences, I have wrote down so many notes. I am beyond excited about being challenged, about growing in this space, so we can do some even more exciting work here in Ohio. So thank you for that. My flame was already lit, but it's on an all-time high now. And you'll see from my partner, before I toss it over to Tola, she has a different perspective than I do, because we work really closely with the 22 community colleges here in Ohio. We support them in advocacy, workforce, succession planning, a laundry list of other things that you mentioned, and we work with our state agencies really closely. But workforce is built into legislation. It's in all of our CBOs, all of our ISPs, probably the same way in all of your states. So how can we truly pull this together and really make this work really impactful for those Ohioans that we serve? So with that, Tola, I'll toss it over to you.
Hi, my name's Taylor Francis Anusi, and I echo everything that Crystal said. I took lots of notes, like she said as well. We work a lot with our ISPs. I work a lot with K-12. I am also in the CTE space. So I took many notes. I also work with a lot of faculty members. So I think it was Travis who said, trying to clear up the terminology with regards to what it looks like. So making that awareness of what micro-credentialing is about. So trying to make sure that they really understand this and coming into this space. So I am really excited, just like Crystal said, coming into this workspace with Workforce in Ohio, really excited about this and learning so much and taking so much back to Ohio. So this is a great opportunity for us to be here, to learn about micro-credentials and the guided pathways. Somebody mentioned about that, kind of like integrating this into that as well. So we're really, really excited about this in Ohio. So thank you.
All right. Hello, everybody. Andrew Gardner, Associate Vice President, Workforce Strategies. I'm an advocate and influencer of accelerated workforce training. So excited to be here with this group. And I'm most excited about the networking and the connections. I've already heard a lot of great lessons learned. And you guys know there's nothing wrong with friendly competition. And we may borrow some ideas throughout this process. So looking forward to being part of this community and moving the work forward.
So just as a quick recap of the states that will be a part of Fellows 2.0, we have representation from Ohio, we have representation from Nevada, we have representation from, I just lost it, Arkansas, North Carolina, and
Mississippi.
Mississippi. Thank you, Mississippi. That's exactly where it is, Mississippi. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. So I'm really excited that this conversation will continue. I want to take just a second, and we've had several questions that have come in through the chat. And so I want to take just a few minutes for any of our panelists to be able to contribute to these, whether it's Fellows 1.0 or Fellows 2.0, whichever. If you guys have an answer, it would be great. So I'm just going to propose a couple of questions. Dharma, we can actually stop sharing screen if that's okay. And let's just open it up for a broad discussion about some of these things. So the first thing is we received a question about federal funding and student aid or other government grant support. So the question itself reads, are you all finding people are able to afford these pathways without federal student aid and or other grant government support? So I would love to kind of open that up. We can also have a parallel conversation in the chat for those folks that do not have video and audio capabilities, but would love to just dig into that for just a few minutes to see what people are thinking.
I'll jump in very briefly and say that in our community, we have been fortunate to have philanthropic supporters of these initiatives. And so that's been a source to bear the brunt of some of the costs. That being said, as a community college, we certainly try to maintain an affordable cost for our students and for our learners.
And I'll just add, I know at least a couple of the colleges of the 4 colleges that Rob mentioned earlier that have been part of the Education Design Lab Micropathways project got support in many ways from employers to do this work. And they created the curriculum with the employers because of specific employer needs. And they also said without that employer support, they would not have been able to do that.
That's exactly what I was also going to add, Mary Beth. We were fortunate enough to have had a college go through this process before the state agency even knew about it. One of our colleges was in the very first cohort for Community College Growth Engine to develop micropathways. And one of the ways they funded learners through this was from scholarships from the employer. So would encourage you to find employers who want to be invested in the partnership with you and that may be willing to provide support for learners to go through the program. And not just learners new coming into the program, but learners that are trying to upskill or reskill even just within the organization.
And to echo that, here in Ohio, I see that one of the components of the micro is the technical skills. And because of that, we have this thing called Tech Cred that is funding that is set aside from the state government to actually reimburse individuals, as long as they are Ohioans, to take some type of certification or micro credential. And then, of course, I'm sure, I know you said something about financial aid, but WIOA funding, we've kind of capitalized on that as well. And then the Ohio Department of Higher Education has set aside short-term certificate funding for in-demand opportunities. So there's probably a list of like 5 or 6 of them that we can utilize per learner as well. And this even extends to some of our dual enrollment for those young adults that do not, fit into the dual enrollment expectations or requirements. We can utilize it that way also. So we've got a few ways that we can kind of fund these opportunities.
Thank you so much. I think something else that's really important to understand is that it's okay that we all have different answers. I think that kind of moving along with this community of practice, right? This is a safe place to figure out what the best answer is within your own context, within your own ecosystem. And so if you are not currently connected with Education Design Lab on social media, on various platforms, the Innovators Network, please make sure that you do so. We want to include you in our community of practice. We want to include you in figuring out what the answers to these difficult problems are. So thank you guys for sharing that response. Another question from the audience is talking specifically about data. So the question itself is, how have you interacted with data systems such as NDCs? The comment referenced Minnesota and Arkansas specifically. We are now dependent on states to measure and share what works over time, not asking about the results themselves, but about how you might be setting up for evaluating longer term outcomes.
We've got very new comprehensive data files that are coming in. And so our current effort, I think, and Dr. Tina Moore, correct me if I'm off base on any of this, our current priority is to grow and support workforce and find ways to appropriately fund workforce, non-degree credentials. So if we can figure out how to fund them and the data files are now built, we can begin that analysis on outcomes. But our current funding model for the credit side is based all entirely on outcomes. So our goal would be to get to that with non-degree credentials as well. We would like to fund them based on outcomes, but we don't have the data yet. We have some of the data, but not enough of it. So anyway.
We collect data across our colleges, our 34 community and technical colleges each quarter. We have data dashboards set up, but that is in our credit space. So our non-credit space is less structured, and campuses are mostly kind of doing their own thing. So we don't have the data from that space. And that's the space where we kind of want to start working in, right? We want to figure out what those non-credit credentials are that we can articulate into credit and keep learners moving on that path to education and career. So I think one thing that we're going to have to do is have some deep conversations with our continuing ed folks and see how we might move toward mapping some of the things that are offered, and then how we can collect information about that. Carolyn would have a much deeper knowledge of this, but I know it's a thing that we've talked about several times, that we don't necessarily have the data we need, and how are we going to go about getting that?
I could say ditto for Minnesota. And I think we've done foundational work to integrate the continuing education side of the house. I hate to say non-credit because it's saying what it's not instead of what it is. I haven't come up with a better term yet that I can use everywhere. But we've done some initial work with that. The policy procedure work group for micro-credentials is looking more at what we need to do in terms of data collection, but also how it's transcripted. So our transcripts are more holistic. So we've made some gains, and we've got a whole lot more to do. And I think a group like this is really helpful in moving us all forward, because we're all suffering from need of more data, right? And
Mary
easier
Beth,
ways to organize and collect it.
Mary Beth, do you want to touch anything on my plan? Because I think that's an interesting concept where you're starting to try to
my CPL.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, and it may be a way to so my CPL is software developed by for us or used and then enhanced by us through Academy One, and I think Ohio uses Academy One Assessed Ed. So shout out to Ohio. And so we're really working on the external assessment side of the house on that, which would include industry certifications, micropathways, that kind of thing, to do a workflow where it's more streamlined and automatic, that I as a student can present whatever certification or credential I've got. If it's been reviewed and we already have credit for it, then it can be put on their transcript. If it hasn't, then we get a faculty evaluator for that. And then all of that is showcased publicly. So we can do them at the system level with more common national certifications, and then institutions can opt in with what they're giving credit for, or institutions can do it more locally with local employers or community-based organizations, and evaluate and then display those, with the idea that everybody's going to be looking at everybody else's stuff and saying, okay, student says, or faculty or director says, oh, they've done this over here, we haven't done it yet, we need to look at it. So we're really trying to scale this up and build more consistency and equity across those course equivalencies. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for sharing the insights about the data. I think that this is a conversation that comes up often in these spaces, right? And so really excited to see how we can continue to develop solutions and figure out the partnerships that need to occur in order to create those robust data solutions. So we have time for about one more question, and then I want to offer to the folks that are here a few resources that you guys can use to continue to engage in this work. So this is two questions that I'm combining into one. It's all about accreditation. So fellows, wrap your brains around this. We're talking about accreditation. So the first question is, how do you align the implementation of program practices with accreditation needs and requirements? And then the second part of that question is, how do you make sure that you maintain continuity amongst and across all of the various micro-credentials, thinking about accreditation on a statewide level?
It's going to be very difficult to have one implementation that serves multiple credentials, because micro-credentials, as we know, is an umbrella term that can be served to validate many different types of experiences, skills, and credentialing. One approach that Minnesota is taking to ensure that we are being consistent in the way that we are fulfilling our accreditor needs is to create a taxonomy of what is the intent behind the credential being issued, and providing specific guidance for the credentials that are being awarded. For example, if we are using a credential mechanism to validate co-curricular learning experiences within an institution that will have less of compliance view or regulatory approach to the creation of those pathways. If you're looking at creating a pathway that is credit-based, then we also have to take in consideration, at least Minnesota State, the criteria for the Higher Learning Commission. And I know that other institutions here are going to be accredited by different organizations. So it is a complex answer, because there is no one single way to ensure that you're fulfilling your accreditor's needs. My recommendation, based on the experiences in Minnesota, is to create a taxonomy that can provide guidances based on the intent behind the credential that you're offering.
tool that we provide at Education Design Lab as a part of the micro pathway design process is a tool called ecosystem mapping. And what this allows us to do is really map out all of the various stakeholders that are a part of the conversation when we are working to solve a problem, right? So when we think about experiences that underserved adult learners experience, right? We think about who are those people that are directly connected to them, who are the systems and organizations that are connected to them, who are those accrediting bodies that are connected to them, really understanding that each layer of our stakeholders has a direct impact on learners, whether we see it directly or not. Anyway, that is a tool and a process that we offer through this. So I would like to thank all of you who have stayed until the very end. And now I have a gift for you. We have recently launched a free micro-credential in micro pathway design. We have launched this through our D2L platform, but this QR code will take you to complete an interest form. This is a thorough look at our design process as we move through understand, ideate, and prototype to really figure out what micro pathway designs might look like in your context. If you do select that you are interested in engaging in this, you will also be invited to a weekly office, or not weekly, a monthly office hour, to engage with others that are doing this work. So there's one gift, is you can keep learning online asynchronously. As I think Carolyn said this, please know that we are here to help you and we are here to answer your questions in any way, shape, or form. That is not something that I am just saying because we are in a webinar. We are truly here to help you. If you need anything, if you have questions, please, please, please feel free to reach out to us. I will be sending out a follow-up email at the end that includes our contact information for those of you guys that would like to learn more, as well as the recording and links. And then the last gift that I have for you is that the Learning with the Lab will continue. First thing is if you are not signed up for our Innovator Network, I would encourage you to go ahead and get signed up for that as soon as possible. This is a great place where our innovations and our findings are being documented on a weekly basis. These come out on Thursdays. Most recently, our fellows and their insights briefs have been published. We have currently published the insights briefs from Arkansas, Minnesota, and Washington came out today. North Carolina and Oklahoma will be coming out in the next 2 weeks. Also, following us on LinkedIn will provide you direct access to some of the things that are happening at the lab. I would love to connect with you as well so that we can continue these great conversations together. But again, thank you to all of you for being here today. Thank you for the first group of fellows for being the guinea pigs of what human-centered design looks like in a state and system context. Thank you, Fellows 2.0, for joining us on this next leg of the journey. I can't wait to see what we're going to find out. And thank you to all of our attendees for joining us in this conversation, for engaging so purposefully in the chat and in the Q&A. My hope is that this is only the beginning of our conversations together, and we are excited to continue to connect. So thank you guys so much for a wonderful 90 minutes, and we look forward to talking soon.